Welcome to episode 107 of the Sports Geek podcast. This week, the Sports Geek Guide for Athletes.
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who sees far too many inappropriate photos athletes post online, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. My name is Sean Callanan, and you are listening to the Sports Geek podcast. You might be doing so on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or my favourite podcast app, Pocket Casts. My name's Sean Callanan. You can catch me on the Twitter at Sean Callanan or at Sports Geek. You'll be able to find me, or you can even use the old-fashioned thing called email. Sean at sportsgeekhq.com will find me. Yes, as DJ Joel said in the opener, I do see far too many inappropriate photos from athletes. I'm unfortunately part of the job at Sports Geek is occasionally I get athletes out of sticky situations online, potentially with photos that get out on the internet that shouldn't be out on the internet. It's not a good part of the job, believe me. But it is something that I do in training athletes and helping them understand social and digital and the both the opportunity and also some of the issues and some of the things that they have to consider. And I want to discuss this. I wanted to discuss this today because just in the last week here in Australia, there's been a couple of articles around Olympians and whether they'll be able to use social media, whether it's a distraction. I guess over the past 7 or 8 years, these type of articles have been, recycled every 2 years from 2007, 2009, 2011, 2013, a year out from an Olympics. And it's pretty much goes along the lines of will the Olympics be ready for social media? And so that was part of the article in the Daily Telegraph with an interview with Hockey Roos star Anna Flanagan. The Hockey Roos are the female hockey team for the Australian team, and Anna, who's a big fan of social media, who's on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and doing an absolutely smashing job on all of those platforms. Wants to be able to use social media. And again, the article pretty much came out, was there going to be bans? Should they be banned? And Kitty Chiller, who's the chef de mission for the Australian Olympic Committee, came out pretty much with a quick tweet later that day. And then an article also came out saying there isn't social media bans, but they are promoting responsible social media use and sort of pointing back to the Australian Olympic team potentially taking their eye off the prize and off the job at hand, getting a bit too caught up in consuming and using social media, and that potentially took away from their results. So that's sort of the debate that happened. I posted the original article with Anna saying athletes should be allowed to use social media. I posted that on the Sports Geek Facebook page, facebook.com/sportsgeek, and it triggered some really strong responses. So I thought it was a really a good time to have my say. I went backwards and forwards on the comments. You can go to facebook.com/sportsgeek to see some of the commentary on the original post. My main thing was that athletes should be trained. Athletes should understand how to use the platforms. They should be understand how to use the platforms a long way out before the Olympics, and then they can make the choice whether they want to use social media, whether they want to make this part of their routine. And I use the Hockey Roos and the Kookaburras as an example. Prior to the Commonwealth Games, I did a joint session, and this is a really classic example of you can tell anybody, but you can tell athletes a certain message, tell them how to do something, and they will take their own takeaways and do it their own way. So I did a session with the Hockeyroos and the Kookaburras, the male team. So both the senior team and the best hockey players in the nation were in the session. There was about 40, I think, in the two squads, and I pretty much went through my social media athlete training and some of the pitfalls, but then also some of the opportunities. And I think, especially for the non-traditional sports, not the non-professional sports, the ones that don't have big leagues. The Olympics is a really big opportunity for them to gain exposure, but also a really big opportunity for these athletes to connect with their fans. And they don't have to just do it in the Olympics; they can do it in all these other events and tournaments that they play in, like the Commonwealth Games. And so I went through the training, and I'm going to go through some of the steps and some of the things that I go through when I do athlete training. And I got two completely different results. The girls team, the Hockeyroos, pretty much completely embraced social, understood how the team was going to use it. They made a team decision to say, we're going to use it, we're going to have fun with it, we're going to use it as a bit of an outlet, we're going to connect with fans, have fun with it, but not have it affect performance. So they knew when they were going to do it, but they went out and took care of business on the pitch, which is the main thing. And then conversely, the Kookaburras, the male team, went the complete opposite direction and went, we are completely focused on results. We are not going to do social as a team. We're just going to lock it down, and we're going to lock the phones in a box at the start of the tournament and get them out at the end of the tournament, which is, again, a completely valid method for a team. And I think the main thing was that they understood what the opportunities were. They understood the distractions, and I'm going to go through some of those as well, and made those decisions. So that was my main point. So it's not just about writing a policy and handing it to athletes. It's about having them buy in. And so you sort of see now a lot of coaches are all trying to, getting teams and getting players to buy into the ethics and the attitude and the rules of their team. And I don't see social media and the use of that being any different. You want to be able to teach them how they can best use these systems. So going back to that question, will the Olympics be ready for social media? I think I've said on this podcast before, definitely have said it on Francis Leach as ABC Grandstand, that the Olympics has always been behind the eight ball. It comes along every 2 years. It doesn't have the speed and the regularity of testing things that you do in the professional leagues, like the NBA and MLB and AFL and EPL, where you can test it. You've got multiple weeks. It's 2 weeks right there, and then you can't test anything. It happens. And sort of speaking to people like Brooke, who's now at the Nets, going through that experience at the Olympics, that it is just so full on from a digital point of view. So they are behind the curve, and they're always going to be. So from an administrator's point of view, they're still grappling with how to manage social and where it fits. Coaches are the same, not quite sure where it fits in their game plan, and they're coming from a generation that didn't grow up with and understand social, so they do go with it's a distraction straight away. Athletes, how are they handling it? And it's very hard for me, at least, if you're going with the banning it or locking it down, to go from 50 weeks, the previous 50 weeks in the year, an athlete has got their phone, they're like everybody else, they're looking at it 20, 25, 30 times a day, they might be using different platforms. And then to go cold turkey, there is evidence it is a lot like, drug withdrawal, of not being able to do what you normally do. So it is a matter of getting into the routine. And then the broadcaster's point of view, they're still playing catch up. We saw a lot of the legal rights and the digital rights of the Olympics not really catching up with social, not allowing video and not allowing Snap, those kind of things. Whereas we've seen that being a lot looser in summer leagues. It's not universal. We see the NBA have pretty much allowed everything, open slather. You can vine video clips straight off the TV, whereas we're seeing MLB and NFL handling it differently. And so it makes it very difficult for the Olympic movement and the organisation, everything like that, to be overly progressive in that space. So it's much easier to wind things back and do things like don't let any video through, don't allow ambush sponsoring and that kind of thing through. So understand all that. From a broadcaster point of view, they've paid a lot of money for those rights, so they're trying to protect those rights. I think there's a lot of evidence now out in the market that more content out there will drive more viewership, will drive more people to bigger screens, that kind of thing. So I think that argument is getting eroded a little bit. It will be interesting to see how Rio goes. And then the last is, the only people who are ready for social media in the Olympics are the fans. They are so ready, and it's just going to explode in Rio. It's going to be that, and it's going to be what it was, at the last Olympics and again. Probably the only thing you can compare it to and sort of look at the numbers is the numbers from the recent World Cup. So they're the main, I guess, the main parties involved in, are they ready? But what I really want to do on this podcast is focus on the athletes. So I don't want you to beep this, James. I'm going to swear, so if you've got kids in the room, it might be a really bad swear word, but I am going to swear, fair warning. I could give a social media policy for athletes in 4 words. It's don't be a dickhead. Hopefully people understand that vernacular and what that is. I think it's pretty much universal. And it's on social media, just don't be a dickhead. Or if you want to clean it up a little bit, and I use this in my interview with Mark Cuban, episode 62, is the Auntie Kath rule. Auntie Kath is now 99, and she is, bless her cotton socks, and a nun. So my rule is I don't put out anything on social media that I don't want Auntie Kath to be upset about. If I have to explain a tweet to Auntie Kath, then I'm going over the line. So I think that, first of all, that's the first, and that's your overarching rule, and that's your policy. So if anyone asks me to write a policy, I'm happily giving this to the Australian Olympic Committee, the US Olympic Committee, the guys at Team GB. If they want a social media policy, they can use it, because it's not about the policy. To me, it's about the education of the athletes to have them understand how they can use social media, or if they should. So the first one I want to address is, and it was the main argument from a conversation point of view on the Facebook page, was athletes should be focused on performance. Social media is a distraction. It's the biggest performance of their lives. They should not be using social. And I completely agree with that. But it does not exclude social media. I think it just is a matter of understanding how it gets how it fits in. So I always open with, remember why you're there. You're not there to trend. You're not there to get likes. You're not there to get so many, to boost your engagement. Yes, it is an ego stroke. All athletes love that side of social media. But the key thing is to remember why you're there. And, you look in the article, both the Daily Tele articles, they do reference the Australian swim team. And I've been referencing the Australian swim team from London a lot in these kind of presentations and when I'm talking to athletes, because they started reading all of their tweets. They started reading all of their replies. They got a bit caught up in the fervour and the fandom of the whole country getting behind them. And I always counter that behaviour, and it's a very natural behaviour to go in there and feel the love during, when you're getting praised. But I always counter that argument and throw the rhetorical question to athletes. When you're in the athlete village or when you're in a big meet, do you read the media? Do you pick up the paper? Do you listen to talkback radio? And they all straight away flatly say, no, don't read anything. And the thing is, social has brought the media into their phone, into their brains. Directly, it's a direct line. The media's got direct contact. They can tag them. Fans have direct contact. And so the key thing for athletes is that's where the distraction is. So take the advice of people like Bill Simmons, who does not ever check his replies ever. Again, I'd find that very hard to do and have to take a lot of discipline, but that makes complete sense in this scenario. Or if you are going to do it in small doses, but know that the internet is full of people who praise, and then it is also full of trolls. So there's always the case of there's no point going there if you're having any issues from a confidence point of view, anything like that. It doesn't make any sense to read any of that. And you could simply be using social as a broadcast mechanism for the time you're away. And that brings me to point number 2, is that athletes, they drive and thrive with routine. And so it's a matter of finding out where social fits in that routine. So a lot of the things that I do when I'm talking to footballers, so AFL and NRL, and I give them a bit of a game day plan. And game day is the key. It's the key day. It's performance day. It's why you're there. And so I always try to give them a mechanism to physically log off. And it might be whatever is comfortable for them. For some of them, it's when they go for their morning walk to stretch, they will tweet what they're listening to relax. Or it might be a photo that they're taking on the way to the ground to say, I'm all pumped for the game. But effectively, it's a little signal to the fans that they are going into game mode and locking it down. And then they turn their phone off. And now that can be the night before, that can be 2 hours before, because it's different for different people, and it can be a team decision. Again, what I did with the water polo team, did some training with them, was made that a discussion point. When do we want? What time do we want to say, okay, shut it down, everybody? And again, everyone discussed it, and I think they came out with 7 o'clock the day before a game. And so it's good. Everyone knows that's the cutoff time. And then as a team, they're all doing their sign-offs, wish us luck, thanks a lot, we're really pumped, and they turn it off and go into lock-in mode and go into game mode. It's a really important thing, because then it can be put into the routine, can be put into their system. And athletes are superstitious by nature. They want to follow the routine. They want to put the right sock on, then the left sock, whatever it is, and they just want to put social in that same plan. And the key for me is to start doing that 6 to 8 months out. So when you're doing all your different tournaments or qualifying tournaments or whatever, is to have the same game plan. And then it's not a thing you have to do. It's not, I better do that Instagram post because I have to. It's just something that you do. It's part of your routine. Then the third one is how to match, is to make sure that you match the athlete to the platform and not to force it. So one of the parties that I didn't talk about when talking about will the Olympics be ready for social media, one of the partners that's in that is social media platforms. They are clamoring for content. They are clamoring for celebrities. They are clamoring for athletes. So who are the jewels in the crown for 2 weeks during Rio? The athletes themselves. They will be falling over themselves to verify them, to tell them that they should put all of their content exclusively on their platform, to use their new bells and whistles. And what athletes need to figure out is, what is the platform that works for me, for my personality, for my skill set, for how I want to engage. So you've got Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, if you want to be doing Facebook pages and using the Mentions app. It's starting to get a bit more traction in the celebrity space. Snapchat, I have no doubt that there will be a stack of athletes using Snapchat. Now, do they want that to be a public account? Do they want people to know? Do they want to follow and send Snapchat stories? Or do they want to really lock it down and not worry about trolls and look at something like Cyberdust and say, this is where I'm going to be. I'm going to be on Cyberdust, and not get that trollish behaviour. Again, if you listen to Mark Cuban on Ep 62, because the troll doesn't have the audience of being a troll, they don't get to they don't get that infamy. So as an athlete, it's a really good platform if you are having that kind of trouble. So the main thing is, and again, I say this to teams as well as athletes, you don't have to do all of them. Do whatever ones that fit for you, and then go with that plan. So again, this is where the important time is. This is where the initial 6 months of 2016 will be really important for athletes to go, I know how to do this. I'm going to do this. We've got to remember, I'm just an athlete. I'm not a comedian. I'm not an entertainer. I just got to put out some content to tell them what I'm doing. Number 4 is to understand a bit of the why. So to go through those platforms and to understand, put yourself in their shoes or in their sneakers, if you will. From an athlete point of view, understand the point of view of the administrator. The administrator is trying to remove all distractions and help you get the best performance in the biggest meet event in your career. They may not, and I think this is where the disconnect potentially is with administrators. They may not use social media in the same way as you. They may not understand what Snapchat is. They might not get Twitter. So something that is foreign is easy to say, well, don't do it. I can't understand that. So that's the position they're coming from. They're not coming from a bad cop police kind of point of view. They want to get the best results, and as do the coaches. The coaches are very much in that same boat. And I've spoken to both coaches from national level and football coaches that have just pretty much thrown their hands up and go, I want to ban it. I don't want to do it. But then even the toughest coaches know that they just can't, because these 18 to 21, 24-year-old athletes are doing it anyway. So it's just a matter of managing and limiting the risk. That's what they're trying to do to get the best performance on the day. And I think the tip for coaches is, and again, if you're an athlete working with a coach or a coach working with an athlete, is to work on that routine puzzle. Where can it fit in the routine where it doesn't affect performance? So things like locking it down the night before, and also saying, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm not going to do. Things like having athlete coach agreements that you're not going to look at your mentions, especially post race, or especially if you've got multiple races, those kind of things. And again, I sort of said before about the social media platforms, understand their motive. They want their platform to be the winner. They want their platform to get the traffic. All of these platforms need the celebrities, the VIPs, or the VITs, if you're at Twitter, they call them very, very important tweeters. They need the big draw cards to draw people into their networks. So they're not doing it for you. They're doing it for them. There is great benefit for you in having these networks, but understand who's working for who in that scenario. And then the last one is the fans. And the fans, again, 80% of the fans want to see success and want to show their support for you. And then you've got that other percentage of fans that just want to be trolls. They want to affect your performance. They would consider that a win. So it's something to really be mindful of on, especially when you're going into that mentions folder on Twitter or looking at what people are commenting on Instagram posts. Sometimes that kind of stuff is best left unread. And it's best left unread for both you, but then also your family. I was listening to Katie Nolan, who's on Fox Sports News and does Garbage Time podcast recently. She did a really great video protesting Greg Hardy in the NFL. And she didn't check her mentions for a couple of days, knowing that a lot of people would be having a crack and commenting on everything that she did. So she did a really good job of not looking. But then her mum decided to call her up and said, it's terrible what they're saying. So it's really, one of the other things athletes need to do is to keep their family informed that they don't need to read the comments either, because it can be just as damaging or even more so damaging if your family's upset and they relay that to you. And no social media policy or no lockdown of social media is going to stop that kind of feeling from your family. So, you need to make sure that as an athlete, you're preparing your family. It's like, I'm going to get this kind of mentions and type of exposure, and people are going to say these things. If you say you're not going to read them and you don't read them, make sure your family doesn't as well. Or at least if they do, to put it in a box and not tell you for 3 weeks until after the event. Number 5, again, this one's a really key one, especially in the lead up. But it's also just really good social media practice, is to know your privacy and know your settings. So from a Facebook point of view, from a personal Facebook point of view, completely lock it down. Like, have it on, dark settings almost. Don't have a picture of yourself. Maybe even go with the alternate name route with a different spelling. From your personal profile. Like, I never tell athletes to get off Facebook because I think that's completely unfair. Everybody else is connecting with their classmates and their cousins and their family, and that's how they communicate. I don't want to take that away from them, but what they need to realise is, as soon as they're in the public spotlight, people will go to search for them. People will go to add them as friends, that kind of thing. So do things like locking down, making sure only friends of friends can send you invites, those kind of things, and locking all your posts down so it becomes very hard from a search point of view. From a Twitter point of view and an Insta point of view, the key thing from a privacy point of view is to understand geolocation. And by geolocation, I mean putting a location on your tweets or your Instagram posts. A lot of people don't know. They put up an Instagram post and they put a pin on it, and it pretty much tells everyone where they live. That's your living room where you've posted that image. So the same goes for Twitter. If you put the geotagging on, they will actually know exactly where you tweet. So again, in the lead up to games, all of those kind of things, don't be tweeting that this is your favourite cafe, that this is where you train. It does get very stalkerish. So turn that off and understand it. And then I think the second one, especially from the whole experience, is the privacy of others. So, you're in the athlete village, you're meeting people, you might get starstruck, that kind of thing. You've got to remember that not everyone will want to be having a photo, definitely won't want a sneaky photo of a famous athlete going to get a sandwich or pestering people for a selfie. That's pretty much standard village type etiquette, but you've got to remember that, the privacy of others. And then the other thing you've got to think about from a privacy point of view is your privacy of your friends and family. Especially, again, from a Facebook point of view, if you don't lock your profile down, not only do you leave yourself open up, it does leave everybody who's your connection opened up as well. So again, if you're connected with other athletes and other celebrities and that kind of thing, then automatically, a little crack, and then you're letting anybody see them via your connection. So, if you don't want to, and I have had this discussion with an AFL football that was, really open and, transparent, everything that he did, and he was really happy to connect with a stack of people. And, the one thing that I brought to his attention is that he might be happy with it, but are the people he's connected with happy with it? Are his teammates? Are his family? That kind of thing. So, consider others when you're looking at your privacy settings. The next one is definitely one more guided towards the Olympics than any other sport, because it is highly regulated, is you've got to play by the rules. So you do have to know what the rules are. I do remember reading the ones for London, and they were, I think it was 3 or 4 pages, very long, but you should understand things like no video due to TV broadcast deals. Ambush sponsorship is something that the Olympics take very seriously. So you can't be doing personal sponsorship and those kind of things. They're going to be the easiest things to find. They're going to be the easiest things to get in trouble. They are going to be the things that are going to be a big distraction. So, use the Olympic term, stay within your lane. Don't go out within play with the rules. The next one is one I think the Hockey Roos and the Hockey Roos girls was one of their main takeaways from my session with them was, remember that social media, be social and have fun. And if you're not having fun, don't do it. Again, it's not for everybody. If it's not up for you, if you don't want to do it, that's fine. You don't have to. but have fun. And the best example of that from a Hockey Roos point of view was they would constantly take a selfie at training, at the end of training, just to sort of a bit of a shout out to the fans and that kind of thing. It was just a regular thing, just a fun way to finish up training every time. And because they were doing that, it was a regular thing. They ended up doing it at the Commonwealth Games, and who should photobomb their photo? The Queen. And I've no doubt that nearly everybody, if you haven't seen the Queen selfie, it was one of the most viral photos of that year. You definitely would have seen it, but I would have put a link in the show notes, and it just shows you the ability. You can't pick viral. I'm not saying go out there, take a selfie, and hope that a celebrity or a royal or a head of state is in the shot. But if you have that routine and you're having fun, those kind of things can happen. And then the last one, goes back to that distraction point. Stay in control, right? You don't have to look at your mentions. You definitely have to make sure you have downtime. And you have to remember this, as much as point 7 was be social, you have to remember the second word of social media. It's media. Treat social media as if it was media. If you wouldn't read the media, don't read social media. If you wouldn't be commenting to the media, then don't be commenting on social media. It's really important to have that distinction to go, well, if I say something, it's going to be in the news tomorrow. It's going to be news. So treat every tweet, every Instagram post as if there is a microphone in front of you. So that's some of my training and some of my thoughts for this podcast. I wasn't planning on doing a podcast this early in the year, but a shout out to David Meerman Scott. David Meerman Scott, famous for newsjacking, a PR legend. We're lucky enough to have him on the Beers, Blokes and Business podcast, beersblokesbusiness.com/81, where we talked about newsjacking. And since these articles came out in the last 2 days, I thought I'm going to put out this podcast. I'll push it out and see potentially, one, if it gets picked up as a counter argument to a lot of the articles that have been coming out, and two, I'm going to send this to the Australian Olympic Committee and to other Olympic committees on this is what athletes should be listening to. This is what they should hopefully help them understand. I'm more than happy to do a full-on workshop for them to help them understand what they can do and what they can't do and what they shouldn't do. I really believe social media training should come from that place of positive and positivity on how they can use it and the opportunity that it presents for athletes, as opposed to the social media scary movie, this is what could go wrong, because I don't think that gets through. Every time I've spoken to athletes that have had that kind of presentation given to them, they very much roll their eyes and they sort of feel like the school teacher telling them off, and they just don't listen to that. So I still give those cases of this is what could happen. The old any photo that's on your phone will end up on the internet at some point, so don't leave it on your phone. I have a whole bit on that, but I really do think the opportunity is far greater, and especially from Olympic sports, they do only get 10 days, 2 weeks of exposure to the world, to the public, to the sports fans, and they should be allowed to leverage that to potentially for marketing opportunities and things down the track. Anna is a really good example of that. 21,000 on Twitter, 42,000 on Facebook, 51,000 on Instagram, because she is putting out content and keeping people informed, and is really well liked in the hockey community. So I think that's the opportunity for them. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on athlete training policies for social media, especially for the Olympics and for major events? But I definitely do see it very similar to the World Cup in the training that I did with the Socceroos prior to the World Cup, and giving them some insights on what they can and can't do. So please let me know. Send me a tweet at Sean Callanan or at Sports Geek. Ask me a question. I'm going to bring in some more Ask Sports Geek questions into the podcast in 2016. So please, if you've got one, and send it in. I may answer it in a tweet. I also may bank it to put it in the podcast at a later date. So they're the main things. Thanks again to everyone who was on the podcast in 2015. 33 episodes last year. You can see them all in recapped on sportsgeekhq.com. Thank you to everyone who has listened, who has tweeted, even though Twitter won't tell me how many tweets I get anymore because they've taken away Twitter accounts, but that's another podcast altogether. Especially, I'm really seeing a lot of sharing on LinkedIn. If we're not connected on LinkedIn, please send me an invite. Say, hey, I'll listen to the podcast. I'd love to know that you do. And then also thank you for the iTunes reviews. You can leave those at sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. One last thing. It's a bit of an experiment that I started, I think about 4 weeks ago. I'm absolutely loving Slack. Slack as a comms tool, as a collaboration tool, team comms. It's helping kill off a lot of emails in my inbox in projects that I'm working with. I'd be really interested in hearing if you're using Slack as a team point of view. I'm hearing a lot of different teams around the world using Slack as a comms tool from a digital team point of view, but then also cross-organisation. So if you want to give it a go, I've set up a Sports Biz Slack community. It's nothing more than lets people try it, kick the tires, and have a chat about sports and sports business and things you're working on and campaigns you like. So yeah, if you want to give Slack a go, it works on your desktop, works on the web, and then also on the mobile. Like I said, I'm using it on about 8 or 9 different projects in a combination of projects that I'm working on here at Sports Geek, and then also with clients. It's a really fun way of doing it. So if you want to jump in and join our sports business Slack, go to sportsgeekhq.com/Slack. To get an invite. That's all you have to do. It does not take too much. That's it from me. James at the end is going to put the sounds of the game. It's from one of my favourite days of 2015, going to the New York City FC game at Yankee Stadium, and a bit of a chant that rang out through Yankee Stadium, which was a fun day. Until next time, my name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek, and you've been listening to the Sports Geek podcast.
Like the Sports Geek podcast? Find us on facebook.com/sportsgeek. Check out which teams work with Sports Geek at sportsgeekhq.com/clients. Want to understand Facebook advertising options? Go to sportsgeekhq.com/FB ads.